Biden, that debate with Trump was a disaster. It seems like even Democrats knew that this was a big problem for the Biden administration. What was your reaction to that debate?
Oh my God. I was actually watching that debate with a whole room full of Democratic colleagues, and these are like party insiders. We're talking about former DNC chairs as well. And literally everyone was face palming because it's one of those, the emperor's new clothes kind of things where, like, I don't think I can say it out loud, but the expression, like the heads were on the table, pounding their foreheads on the table, that kind of bad kind of reaction. And so there's no sugarcoating it. It was as abysmal and horrible of a reaction as you can imagine.
Got it. So do you think, I mean, obviously now we've heard that he's been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, which is terrible. I mean, it's metastasized to his bones, which, I'm guessing in even the most rare forms and aggressive forms would take at least a year, if not 2 or 3 years to spread. It seems like at the time of the debate, he was probably already a stage 2 or stage 3 cancer. And wouldn't somebody have known? Like, what's your take on this?
Yeah, the cancer thing is, again, completely separate of the cognitive issues where, you can debate whether or not there was a huge cover up of the cognitive issues, and read Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson's book. I don't want to get into that because, but for cancer, I know. I'm a cancer epidemiologist. I've gone through many NCI cancer programs. One of the things we know is there are certain cancers that we have screening for. We have mammography for breast cancer, colonoscopy for colon cancer, and we have PSA testing for prostate cancer. We don't have good tests for other cancers. We have, x-rays for lung cancer. But for most cancers, we actually don't have good tests for. But for these big three, prostate, colon, and breast, we have decently good tests for it. And the fact that the latest news that Biden didn't have a PSA test since 2014, that's according to their spokesperson. This is like official spokesperson. That's unimaginable. Like, some people are quoting me, well, men over 70 shouldn't get it. Well, it's not that men over 70, prostate cancer is a cancer that affects the elderly for the most part. It's not like you shouldn't test for it. It just, oftentimes people don't bother testing for it because they think, oh, a lot of prostate cancer is mild. But I think people really need to put that into perspective. Like, for example, no one says pancreatic cancer is mild. No one says, breast cancer is mild. And, for the vast majority of people with breast cancer, they do survive. But we don't say like, oh, it's just breast cancer, pish posh. Most of you won't die. And by the way, this attitude, I see it all the time in COVID as well. We'll get to that later. But, oh, most of you are healthy. You won't die. This dismissiveness is insane. You have to look at the denominator, because the denominator is breast cancer is the number one cancer in women. Prostate cancer is the number one cancer in terms of like total incidence in men. And so even if you say most of them are mild, let's just go to just the severe or the more advanced ones, the regional and the metastasized ones. These two kind of cancers of prostate alone is way more than, say, cancers of pancreatic or brain cancer. And no one says, well, oh, it's if you compare to that, how deadly prostate cancer is compared to in terms of advanced prostate cancer to these other cancers, we wouldn't really be dismissing it as like, oh, it's rare. No, we would be testing it. And if we had tests for those tests, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, John McCain, for all these cancers that we didn't have early stage tests for, we would have probably saved their lives. But the fact that Biden, he's the president, he was the vice president, right? And the president, the fact that he has not had a PSA test in the last 10, 11 years is just insane. Like, and by the way, the guidelines that says you should not get it's not that you should not get, doctors should not offer a PSA test to someone over the age of 70 is because they think you're going to die anyways. And that's a stupid logic, first of all, because you know, let's just say American life expectancy is 75 to upper 70s, but the issue is like that's including all the other kinds of infant mortality, childhood mortality, and other mortality in your 70s. By the time you get to age 50 or 60, if you've already survived to age 50 or 60, you will have a very good chance of surviving way past 75. And so for them
Oh,
to
that's
say,
really interesting.
yeah,
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 like I've always been sort of depressed by that mortality number. It's like, oh man, you're done at 75 or whatever, like game over. And what you're saying is because of all the other reasons people die, whether it's homicide or infant mortality or drug overdoses or whatever, that actually is like an anchor almost. That's
yeah,
what you're
it's
saying, right?
pulling the average down. But if you
Mm.
do survive to 50 or 60, your chances of surviving to 80 are actually pretty good. And I think people just need to just completely wrap their heads around this. Oh, stop testing at 70. That's insane. And by the way, a lot of things, fine. If you want to argue that some diseases, once you have it, we don't have any treatment for, Alzheimer's, we don't really have a good treatment for that. A lot of diseases, we don't have treatments, even if you test positive, like John McCain's brain cancer was kind of basically inoperable. Like many brain cancers are like that. But we have treatments for this. If you detect it early, you could have surgery to remove it, or you can have radiation. All these, there are interventions if you're early enough. Now, there's some people who's like, well, PSA testing is not very accurate, blah, blah, blah. It's not accurate as in like, if you have a very high number, basically there's something called sensitivity. Like base sensitivity is a probability that you'll find the true disease, and specificity is the chance that you'll avoid false positives. And so it's a sliding scale. The higher your sensitivity to find true disease, the more false positives you have. But the lower, if you want to lower the sensitivity, you'll have a lot of these false positive problems. And so I think what at the end of the day, what we should do is there's something even better than just a one PSA test. And that is you should test for PSA velocity. Like epidemiologists always say you should always repeat, never rely on one test, right? Remember COVID? Like if you catch it early, too late, you might be negative. You need to do repeat tests, and you look at the change. Because one thing that's again, a lot of naysayers are like, well, prostate cancer, a lot of them are just mild. They don't really advance. They're indolent. They'll just sit there in the organs, not going to metastasize. You're fine. Most men die with prostate cancer, not from prostate cancer. You heard this with and from thing. It sounds familiar. You heard it during COVID a lot too. But the issue is if the PSA is suddenly spiking, starts surging in rates, that's when you know that the disease is suddenly advancing, because there's a lot of other causes of high PSA, other like enlarged prostate and many other conditions. But if it's surging, that's highly predictive of an advancing cancer. And the fact that Biden's doctor, the president of the United States doctors didn't at least do this test, which again, we have early treatments for. You can actually do something about it. And it's not that expensive, right? It's just pee, and you can also do like other digital examinations for. It's not that hard, not that expensive. We have interventions for it. The fact that they didn't do it is just insane. I can't wrap my head around this. And there's actually in guidelines from the American Cancer. I'll get into also the guidelines of American Cancer Society, because the U.S. Preventive Service Task Force is it's put out by HHS. This committee, the moment they start changing the guidelines, guess what? All the health insurance companies are mandated to cover this test. So there's a lot of people who don't they like to get funny with the guidelines and try to really massage it down, because it's one of those things where, to keep healthcare costs low, right? But the American Cancer Society which I respect way more than U.S. Preventive Service Task Force, that set the stupid age 70 guideline. They are always like, no, there is no age per se. If you have less than 10-year life expectancy, maybe don't offer it, but they definitely say stop getting the test. And by the way, years ago, American Cancer Society wanted the age 40 mammograms. U.S. Preventive Service Task Force didn't. They wanted the age 45 colon cancer screening. U.S. Preventive Service Task Force didn't. But eventually they caught up and they did, because with enough pressure, like, come on, we got to save more lives. Cancer rates,
Right.
cancer are up on the
So
rise.
it sounds to me like what you're saying is there's sort of like a political arm that might be potentially influenced, probably as by lobbying, that suggests, hey, the corporate health insurers, they don't want to cover all these screenings. Let's get these guidelines to where at 70 we're not paying for PSAs anymore, because maybe you've only got 10 years left per health guy, life expectancies or whatever. Same thing for mammograms. Maybe we don't want to do those starting at 40, like you said, or otherwise. It feels politically influenced on behalf
I can't
of the
say for
insurance
sure.
company.
It's one of those things, like, I don't have the hard data to say that, this is like all lobbying kind of things. You don't really actually say that this person was influenced. But these federal guidelines, I've seen it in the dietary guidelines world. You shouldn't eat this, you shouldn't eat that. Guess what? By the time it passes through federal review, it gets way watered down. And U.S. Preventive Service, it's a scientific body, but it's run by an agency, which actually, by the way, has been killed off. Agents for Healthcare Quality and Research has actually been killed off by HHS under RFK Jr. But it's a good agency. But the issue is, like, it's one of those things where, like, there are a lot of bean counters also in the room, right? As opposed to, let's maximize lives saved. Especially when you have a high VIP kind of person who's a vice president back in 2014 and the president of the United States and candidate, you should at least test for PSA. Damn those U.S. Preventive Service Task Force. Like, again, this is the minimizer group that previously says, oh, you don't need mammograms at age 40. You don't need colonoscopies at age 45. And eventually, after many, many decades of pressure, they relented. And so this is one of those things where, like, God, they need to get rid of this age 70 thing, because people are living way longer. And this age 70 is kind of like playing with this, average life expectancy is 75. We don't, but that's
it almost makes you a little like, as every individual watching this, we should almost be thinking like, hey, be careful. Some of the guidelines that say you should start having certain tests at a certain age may be driven by politics or accountants, like you said, bean counters, who are like, we don't want to cover all this stuff at this point, where maybe we should be thinking about certain testing earlier, eh? I mean, or would you just recommend follow the guidelines by the American Cancer Society? What sort of
American Cancer Society is in my opinion, better. American Cancer is a nonprofit. It's not just a small dinky organization. It's been around for the longest time. They offer so much cancer services, but their scientific committees are, world renowned. It's almost like an NIH, a CDC for the world of cancer. And I think they have it right. They're on the precautionary side, especially for a disease which you have early interventions for, right?
Right.
And I think people just need to get this prostate cancer is mild thing out of their head. Prostate cancer is so common. Yes, a lot of them are mild, but the advanced one, let's just pretend advanced prostate cancer is a completely set of diseases. Advanced prostate cancer alone as a body is way more common than brain cancer, kidney cancer, pancreatic cancer, ovarian cancer. It is a huge burden on men in terms of cancer mortality, especially minority men, which again is already, like African Americans have way higher prostate cancer severity than white men, and they should get tested way more aggressively. But this is actually not that invasive a test. I don't know why it's people are trying to like cut down on this test. It's such a life-saving test. Fine, maybe you find many of you with indolent cancers or which is not growing, but you should do the repeat test so you can see the changes in this velocity.
And I think that is interesting that you mentioned that, because really you could take a test 1 year and then, okay, good, I don't have prostate cancer. But what you're saying is, unless you check again a couple years later, or how frequently should you do it, whatever your recommendation is there, you can't see the delta basically, and that's what you want to measure.
You need to see the delta. Looking at a delta is way more important than looking at the absolute value, because the absolute value can be affected by many other diseases. Like, normally they said high is greater than 4, but there's again many other reasons you can be high, and that's where people is like, well, look at all these false positives, blah blah blah. No,
Right.
you need to do the repeat check, and the fact that Biden was never offered a repeat check, according to their spokesperson since 2014, is just insane. He's,
So
president of the United
I
States,
commented.
as president.
I totally agree with you. I commented, I replied to one of your X posts, your tweets, and I said, "Do you think that this is sort of like a monkey see no evil?" And I want to see, maybe you can share your response on that, because I feel like it's very well. If we don't check, we don't know, and we don't have to disclose. We did it in 24. We're good. I mean, what's your take on that? It feels a little slimy that they didn't do it, or almost malpractice, dare I say?
Yeah, so I said it was a little bit of a malpractice. Now, malpractice legally is like doing something against clinical code. So I'll just say it's my opinion that it is bad medicine, because he's elderly. That his family has history of cancer. His son Bo died of cancer, as well, as and it runs in the many other cancers run in the family. And the fact that he wasn't offered it, like, what were you thinking? It's been like 10 years. These doctors have to offer him something. And if he's the president and he's running for re-election, you expect him to live probably quite a while longer. So you need to do every precaution to do these tests. Now, whether they actually did or not, I don't really know. According to the statement, they didn't, which is, it's derelict malpractice, of medicine, of like care. But even separate of medicine, the fact that no one even thought of offering it in his circle, like, who are his White House doctors? He goes to Walter Reed, our medical center, every year. They never bothered doing one, and then they said he is in perfect health. This is such an ostrich in the sand kind of moment, so I like your, see no evil, hear no evil. Pretend there's no evil. It's same with the pandemic. If you don't test, there's no COVID, right? Oh God, there's so many analogies of the pandemic we can both, but this is just insane. And just, there's so much minimizers, because Biden's advisors, CDC advisors, early on also told him, if you get the vaccine, you won't get COVID. And that was once true in 2020, and early 2021, when the variants hadn't emerged, right? But by like 2020, late 2021, with the alpha variant, in 2022 especially, and beyond, all these delta variants and Omicron, it wasn't true anymore. And there was so much data that, and then became, if you test positive, you won't spread. Or it's going to be mild, or like don't worry about it. No one can get sick from you getting COVID if you already got vaccinated. And all these kind of like minimizer stuff. And the 6 feet rule, don't get me started on that one.
Well, we'll have to talk about that in a sec. What I want to know though is there a possibility? What was I going to say? Is there a possibility that had Biden been tested, he would have had to have stepped down? Because he would have been discovered to have, let's say, I don't know, stage 3 or some form of advanced cancer.
I don't think he necessarily had to step down, right? I think if you didn't have metastatic, right now he has metastatic cancer.
Right.
That's the problem. It's spreading, to other organs and to the bone. I think I read somewhere. I think if he had gotten tested earlier, maybe he would have had to undergone radiation or surgery to remove the prostates. But those are kind of like just short, brief kind of things. It doesn't really kind of inhibit you. I think obviously the narrative would have been, he's a frail old man. And and today, by the way, a member of Congress just died, Congressman Jerry Connolly of Virginia. And he announces he had cancer like earlier this year, like in January or something. And it's May, and he already passed away. It's cancer can move very fast, especially if you don't test for it. And if we have tests for these. It's not like one of those things where like leukemia, sometimes it just pops up, and by the time there's no early predictors of early leukemia, or the advancement of this organ that could indicate cancer emerging or becoming more aggressive, for like brain cancer, I wish we had something like that. So many non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, they're so deadly. Pancreatic, that's so deadly. Steve Jobs, remember, he died of pancreatic cancer, and they caught it too late, and they weren't aggressive in treating it. I always tell people, whoever have some conspiracy about cancer, because I used to run a large cancer campaign, with like 5-6 million people, and so I've seen every kind of like snake oil kind of claim or some sort of denial, or like, oh, you scientists have the cure for cancer, you're just holding it. And I'm like, look, a billionaire, Steve Jobs, who's the most neurotic person about life hacking anything, he died of cancer. And John McCain, one of the most powerful members of Congress, died of cancer. And all these litany of famous people died of cancer. You think that there's an actual cure and we're just hiding it? Come on, there's the conspiracy out there.
It sounded like Jobs was going for some form of like holistic treatment path as opposed to traditional measures.
And it delayed his actual treatment. And he actually said he regretted it. It was one of those things that he very much regretted, that he delayed and didn't pursue much more aggressive therapy.
Do you think there's a benefit to these? And I see this marketed all the time, these like holistic body screens or whatever, like these blood tests or whatever. To me, it seems like once your CBC, your complete blood count says your white blood cells are elevated, it's like leukemia. It's probably too late anyway, but I don't know. Like, what's your opinion on these things?
Well, I think, first of all, these whole body scans are very expensive unless you fly overseas, and medical tourism is not something we should, tout in America, as in like, if America's so great, why do you have to fly elsewhere for these much more?
It's funny you say that. I keep seeing these TikTok videos of people like, I get IVF in Turkey and it cost me less than 10 grand. Here it's $100,000 or whatever. Oh, maybe maybe less than that, but still.
I know, but it's still like, this is not a public health solution, right? This is a rich people solution. I work in public health. I try to think like, how can we save more lives, not just for the boutique bespoke crowd, right? Like, look, if we truly had an early identifiable biomarker for brain cancer or pancreatic cancer or ovarian cancer, one of my friends wouldn't be dying right now. I like, these are the things where it is so ridiculous to kind of say that, oh, we have this magical thing, oh, that you guys don't have. If we had it, it would be on the cover. Trust me, if we had developed one of these tests that can predict some of these cancers, like, or say, wow, you have this cancer very early on, it would be like cover of like New England Journal of Medicine and like the news worldwide. There's no cover up around this, and there's no magical thing. Maybe you'll find a few extra, oh, maybe this mole is like, perhaps cancerous, but again, with skin cancer, some are not, it's like some like squamous cell carcinoma, it's not very dangerous. The melanoma is dangerous, but again, we don't really have good screening tests other than, look for everything that emerges. But this is where you have to be vigilant. And the fact that Biden wasn't, his doctors weren't vigilant about this, it's derelict and insane. And I don't even know. Like, I'm so mad at U.S. Preventive Service Task Force right now for them putting out this less than 70 test, over 70 don't bother testing. It is just insane. It's just like when back in the day, they said, oh, for age 40-year-old, no mammograms. Age 45, no need for colon cancer. It's just,
that's crazy. What do you think? And this I feel like is a stretch, but do you think that the advancement of Biden's cancer could have affected his cognitive function? It seems very different, but some people allege that maybe small bits have started developing in the brain, and maybe that's why we saw some of that advanced decline.
I can't really comment in terms of medicine. Like, obviously, if you had brain cancer, it would, right? A brain tumor would, but we don't have any. I don't have medical records, and I have, we haven't seen these kind of things. But it's one of those things where I don't know how long he's had it. That's the other thing. Like, did he just have advanced prostate cancer this year, or did this did this pop up like 2 years ago, right? It's so I can't really speculate on that at all. But
Yeah, I guess they'd have to do a brain scan and see if there are any tumors in there, which again, I feel like is a little bit monkey see no evil. Like, oh, no, we just don't want to check, I don't know.
I think they probably had some like off the books tests, to be honest, for various diseases. I can't imagine the president of the United States not having that. I don't know. Like maybe like there's a Walter Reed official physical, right? And then
Right.
there's like a private, medical kind of thing.
Oh, interesting. Like they put out maybe the White House medical and not the Walter Reed one, in other words. Now, do you think that these are things that I wouldn't be surprised end up getting subpoenaed or whatever by the Trump administration, and they look to uncover some, every bit of testing that was done? I don't know if they could do it with HIPAA, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Trump figures out how to do everything he wants.
Yeah, I think private medical records
you
you can't get at. That's just it's pretty ironclad. You can't get at that. It is what it is, unless it's official government release that they decide to disclose. Look, Biden. I've talked to many people, and Biden's health has been on the decline for a long time. You don't even need to read Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson's book to know that it was true. Cognitive is one thing. Cancer, the other thing is like you become extremely lethargic over time, right? You become very, very easily tired. And I think in the book they were saying 4 p.m. was the end of his workday. Basically, he just retired after 4 p.m. to go back to the East Wing. So,
and we heard that he'd have to take naps as well during debate preparations or whatever. So maybe those were all early indicators where, a doctor that actually cared, and followed science would have maybe done some extra screening panels, huh?
Yeah, I think honestly they should have done a whole slew of different other tests. We'll never know, honestly. But at the very least, what I care Biden's health. It's unfortunate. I don't even wish bad health on anyone, regardless of political thing. But the issue I care about is like the message that it sends to other people, the lay general population are watching. Because now they're like, oh, prostate cancer is mild. If you're over 70, you don't need to test. Because when people hear that, it's like, oh, that's kind of like, oh, old people. It sounds too old people. Lay people hear old people are immune. That's what it sounds like, right? Or old people, you don't need to worry about it. This disease is that, or like, don't worry about it. It barely progresses. But many prostate cancers don't progress. But as a whole, if you take just advanced prostate cancer, let's just pretend it's a completely different disease. It's a huge number of people who have regional and advanced prostate cancer. And it's just people need to think of the denominator, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, quick reminder, if you want to earn a 5% yield plus all of the upside in my real estate startup, we are offering a non-accredited investor round where we will pay you a 5% yield plus you get all of the upside in the stock when your stock converts in the future. It gives you an opportunity to diversify away from rich stock market valuations, diversify away from most tariff risk, diversify away from the craziness of the treasuries market, especially with these Moody's downgrades. You diversify into fixer-upper real estate, which is what I believe I do best. This is my baby. I call it my little Berkshire Hathaway. Now, maybe I'm biased, but I've got over $5 million of my own money invested into this business, and I'm so excited for what I think we're going to be able to do with this business over not just the next years, but the next decades. So if you want to invest in my real estate startup, go to househack.com and know that I will do everything for this business in my power to make sure we can do the absolute best that we can. Make sure to read the solicitations and disclosures on the HouseHack website because there is risk with every investment.